My name's Lizzie. I am currently 35 weeks pregnant with our fifth living child. And this is my first pregnancy update for this pregnancy. So I want to just sort of run you through where things are at and give you a little bit of background for it. So I'll show you my tummy. This is baby Jane Mercy, and she is feeling nice and big and healthy. And I actually got pregnant with her about 7 weeks after our miscarriage with baby Amy. We did decide to just go ahead and try again for another baby straight away. There were quite a few things that sort of factored into that. But basically, at the time, I felt very overwhelmed by it. I felt very selfish wanting to be pregnant again because at that time I was not helping my husband in the business. I was doing basic admin, like submitting invoices and things like that. But I was very conscious that I was not performing. I wasn't doing as well as I normally would do, unsurprisingly, because we'd just lost a baby 7 weeks before. And so I felt a real pressure, like I had to not get pregnant. I had to get my head back in the game and all those things. But my husband is amazing and he really supported me through that and talked me through it all. And at the end of the day, he just said, look, like the business is always going to have ups and downs. The business is going to be where it's going to be. Like, we don't make decisions about our family based on the business, based on where it's at, based on what's going to happen there. And at that point, it was like, well, we didn't know what would or wouldn't happen. We just knew that I was struggling. And a big part of that for me, he was still concerned, primarily for me. He was like, if we then went in and had another loss, that would obviously be a huge burden for me. But that was one of the reasons why I actually wanted to try again, was I already knew that it would be our biggest age gap. Our other babies have been about 2 years and 9 months, 2 years and 10 months apart. Whereas when Jane will be born, our toddler will be 3.5. So it's nearly 9 months bigger age gap this time. And I really felt like I didn't want to delay that. I didn't want to push that out further. And I also felt I didn't want the burden of, I've waited 6 months to have another baby and then I lose that baby anyway. So we just sort of went through this whole very emotional journey to get to the point of just surrendering it to God anyway and just saying, Lord, just like, we'll leave it in your hands. And I didn't think that we would conceive the cycle that we conceived. I ended up being birth support for my twin sister the night before I ovulated. And so I was like sleeping for days and days and days. But here we are, and baby Jane is here. My husband was very surprised when I gave him the test. It took him like minutes to be like, oh wow, like the first time we tried, we got pregnant again. Like it was a shock even to him. But very exciting and thrilled to be at 35 weeks now. And so the pregnancy overall has gone really, really well. I struggled around Amy's due date. I actually ended up being in America. I did an 8-day trip to for the acquisition.com. So Alex Hormozzi's team does business workshops. And it was the first time I felt comfortable leaving our toddler, primarily because of that bigger age gap. So she was 9 months older than a toddler normally would be at that stage of pregnancy. And so we looked at it and went, okay, this is probably like the one window of time for at least another 3 years, but probably possibly ever, where I'm going to feel confident leaving the toddler at home with my husband and going for this workshop. And so that was a really, really helpful workshop. It really helped clarify a lot in what we were doing in the business. And it gave me, because I was about 25 weeks pregnant at the time, I think 24 weeks pregnant maybe. And it really gave me like clarity on, this is what we're going to work on for the final stretch of the pregnancy before I go into maternity leave. So that was an amazing trip, but it fell over Amy's due date. That was just how the timing worked out. So I was alone in America, away from my family. I've never been away from my family for 8 days ever. I've never been left for more than 2 nights, I think. And so it was very emotionally overwhelming being there. It was reassuring feeling Jane move at that time because she was moving. So it was comforting being at a point in her pregnancy where I knew she was okay because she was moving. But it was very overwhelming. I under anticipated how hard that would be, facing Amy's due date and being away from family. But thankfully, Jane's pregnancy has gone amazingly. I'm really grateful to be 35 weeks pregnant with Jane. I'm really, really excited to meet her. I've been finding these last few weeks of the pregnancy are more difficult to be patient. Obviously, I don't want her to come before 37 weeks. I don't want a premature baby. That would be counterproductive. But I'm just really looking forward to having her in our arms and knowing that she's safe. So I did try to get into the Sunshine Hospital home birth program again. I had my first 3 babies through that program, and then we had our 4th through a private midwife because the program wasn't running at that time because there were ambulance shortages and all the different hospital policies back in 2022. I'd had my first 3 through the program and it was a really good experience. It's Medicare funded, which is significantly easier than $7,000 out of pocket for a private midwife. But the house that we purchased is 31 minutes away from the hospital, and they have a strict 30-minute boundary. And so I got risked out for being 31 minutes from the hospital instead of 30 minutes from the hospital. So it is still considered safe for me to home birth, but I risked out of the program. And so I have managed to find a private midwife, Joy, who seems amazing, who we're excited to work with and hopefully get to have another home birth. It's one thing that I'm really looking forward to. We were really weighing it up because we just bought our first home back in May, and obviously there's been a lot of expenses and stuff that have come up with that. So we're really weighing it up. We were initially looking at a bunch of different options. There's a birth center that is a 50-minute drive from us, and they would let us take all of the kids with us, so the kids could still be with me. Having lost Amy, one thing that I found, I wasn't jealous of other people with their babies. It wasn't painful. My twin sister had a baby and I was birth support. It must have been about 7 weeks after losing Amy. And that didn't cause me pain. But what I found really hard was looking back on old videos and photos of my kids interacting with their newborn siblings. And I had that real sense of, that's what I've missed out on. It wasn't about other people. It wasn't about their babies. It was about what I was missing out with my babies and seeing them with their sibling. And one of my favorite things with every single one of our births has been having the kids there and having them see their sibling be born. I've currently lost the footage from my 4th birth. I did have it. I watched it back once, and having older kids at the birth, because obviously before that my kids had been younger with the other siblings that were born, but seeing, I had the 3 older kids at that one, and they were so excited. I was giving birth in the birth pool, and every time the midwife got the mirror to like see what was happening with the baby, all 3 kids went rushing over to look and see what the midwife was seeing, and they were so engaged and so excited to see their sister be born. And so I felt like that's like the first really precious memory to me when it comes to having a baby, is seeing the siblings interact with that and having them be part of the birth process. And so we were looking at the birth center option because I was stressed about adding that financial burden to the family of spending $7,000, to have a home birth that I want to have. But 2 of my births, so my second birth was 1 hour from when my waters broke, and I had 1 hour until the baby was born. And our midwife burst through the door as our son was born. And then my 3rd birth, I had 50 minutes. So the midwife did manage to get there in time. I think she got there 3 contractions before she was born. That was my concern, is I've had 2 births that were an hour long. My 4th birth was 2 hours long, which is technically long enough, but it's really still a very quick birth. And so in planning all of that, I was looking at it going, well, I can get to the birth center in 50 minutes, but I'll probably have a baby by the side of the road in a car full of kids, and that will in and of itself add stress to myself and my husband, and also increase my bleeding risk, because if your body is full of adrenaline, it can interfere with the hormones that are supposed to reduce your bleeding. When it comes to bleeding risk, having big babies increases your risk of bleeding, like excessive bleeding. Having fast labors increases your risk. having your fifth full-term delivery increases your risk. Thankfully, I have never had big bleeding. My midwives have almost always commented on how cleanly I have birthed. Even though I have all of those risk factors, I'm not concerned about blood loss because it is something that I've not had any trouble with in the past. And of course, the midwives have all of the Pitocin and the medicine with them at home anyway to assist if that is an issue. So we were really looking into the birth center option. I'd been to a few appointments there, but at the end of the day, my husband is amazing. And he's just like, I just see this as an investment in your mental health. Like, let's just get a private midwife and just do this because, yeah, it is really important to me. It's important to me to try. And I don't have a problem if I have to transfer because there's some sort of issue with me or some sort of issue with Jane. That's fine. I obviously don't want the kids with me then because I don't want them distressed by whatever's happening. And so that's a very different scenario. But it really bothered me that I would go into the birth when everything is fine. Like, I've had an amazing pregnancy. Jane's growing really well. Everything seems really healthy, really normal. And I didn't like the idea of going into that and disrupting that and creating friction where there didn't need to be friction. So we're very excited to be having a home birth, just waiting it out now. So I'm really curious to see how this birth turns out. My first baby was born at 40 weeks and 3 days. My second baby was 39 weeks and 1 day. My third was 38 weeks and 3 days. So in my head, I was like, okay, they keep coming earlier. My fourth was 40 and 5 days, so my longest pregnancy. So I very much am going in trying to not have assumptions about what may or may not happen. Emotionally, I think I would prefer her to be born earlier. And that's definitely something that I keep sort of surrendering to God, to trust the process, trust my baby, trust my body. But we're really looking forward to having her here. As you can tell, it's definitely a different process being pregnant after loss. I found with my first 4 babies, I just wasn't worried. I knew about stillbirth risk. I actually listened to quite a lot of influencers who had had stillbirth at the time. Missy Lenning and Heidi Kim at that time were sharing their pregnancies after losses. And it was almost more of an educational thing. It was like, I need to be aware of this to know what the signs and symptoms are. But it didn't feel personal. It didn't feel like a personal risk. And even though we lost Amy early in her pregnancy, we were in the smaller percent of people. So typically with a miscarriage, people will say, you know, it's 1 in 4 babies. Like, it's meant to be comforting that 20 to 25% of babies are miscarried. And maybe some people do find solace in that. But basically, how the statistics play out, the majority of those losses are before there is a heartbeat. So something actually goes wrong before the baby is growing. With us, we were able to see her heartbeat at 7 weeks. And then when we went back in at 9 weeks, she had stopped growing about a week earlier, which puts us in a much smaller percent. I can't remember whether it's 1% or 4%, but it's a much smaller percentage of miscarriages happen after you've had that positive, there's a heartbeat, the baby is growing. And so I think that's made it harder at this tail end, knowing that it's less than 1% of babies are stillborn. The most likely outcome is everything will be fine. Like, everything's amazing. I've had 4 amazing full-term deliveries before, but it's just really hard knowing we were already in that small percentage once, and I don't want to be in that small percentage again. So I'm very keen to have her here with us. So in terms of preparing for her birth, I'm 35 weeks and 1 day now. I did start seeing an osteopath for the first time ever 2 days ago because I'm a huge fan of spinning babies, of trying to get babies into their optimal positioning for birth, primarily because my first baby was posterior and I had a very long posterior backache labor. So it was a total of 21 hours and her active labor was only about 4.5 hours. And I didn't know anything about optimal positioning back then. And then, having had that experience, I found the Spinning Babies website and I worked on just the daily exercises to try to get my babies in a good position. Then what happened with my second and third pregnancies, I had prodromal labor. With my second, it was 2 weeks of on again, off again. So it wasn't every single day for 2 weeks. It might be like 1 to 2 nights of lots and lots and lots of contractions, not Braxton Hicks, like actual contractions that I have to work through, but they would just disappear. And then I might have a day or 2 or 3 without any contractions, and then they come back. That happened for 2 weeks before he was born, and then born in 1 hour. And then with my third, it happened for 8 days before she was born. And so going into my fourth baby, I started to look more at, okay, well, can I get extra help? The Spinning Babies website has a lot of do-it-yourself exercises at home. But one of the theories with prodromal labor is that your baby is in a bad position. And because the baby is malpositioned, that's why your body is sort of like kickstarting but not progressing. So with Sophie's pregnancy, I worked with a chiropractor because my prodromal contractions started at 35 weeks and 5 days. The first time that I woke Steve up was 37 weeks and 5 days because I had been up for 3 or 4 hours. The contractions were coming every 2 to 3 minutes. I was having to really work through them. I was rocking, I had breathing, I had my heat pack. And I thought, okay, this might actually be it. It had already been carrying on for 2 weeks at that point. So I woke Steve up at 3 a.m. to fill up the birth pool. And she wasn't born for another 3 weeks, which is just ridiculous. So I ended up with 5 weeks of on again, off again prodromal labor with her. And so this time around, I basically, that was the only pregnancy where I saw a chiropractor every single week to try to help with the alignment. And at the end of the day, it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. The Spinning Babies website recommends chiropractic care. But what I was looking at is the whole principle is really built on sort of soft tissue preparation and how tightness and turns and tension and stuff in your soft tissue and ligaments can interrupt the process. And whereas chiropractic is more focused on the cracking and the structures. I know that obviously they have soft tissue knowledge as well, but it's really focused on the physical alignment, whereas osteopathy, as far as I was sort of aware, is a bigger mix, a lot more soft tissue exercises than the chiropractic care. And that's certainly what I experienced in terms of my first osteo appointment 2 days ago. A lot more just stretching me out, just like stretch, release, stretch, release, stretch, release versus cracking. So that was why I decided to try osteo this time, because I tried chiro last time, did it every single week, and it ended up being my longest prodromal labor, my longest pregnancy. And so I thought, well, I'll give something else a crack this time. The osteo appointment did set off my first day of prodromal labor, so it actually sort of kicked that off a bit earlier than even Sophie's pregnancy. So I was only 34 weeks and 6 days, and I had proper strong contractions, like woo, I got to breathe through that. So I ran myself a bath with Epsom salts, laid in that for half an hour. That helped calm everything down, and they died off overnight. Overall, I'm actually really hopeful that will, once I'm full term, I'm not having my next appointment until I'm 37 weeks, but I'm really hopeful that will help get me aligned and then trigger contractions and then hopefully help the baby get down into a good position. Particularly for baby Jane, she is favoring an oblique position. So her head is in my hip, and she still seems relatively mobile because sometimes it's my left hip, more often than not it's my right hip. So she is moving. She's not just nestled in that one spot. She seems to be settling in my right hip. And now at 35 weeks, the Spinning Babies website does say that by 35 weeks, like, your baby really should be not oblique. It's fairly late in the pregnancy to be oblique. However, the midwives have consistently told me that when you're having your 5th full-term delivery, that's very normal for them to be malpositioned even right up until you go into labor. So I'm trying to be proactive and address that malpositioning, but also not panic about it. So the challenge with oblique and my specific prayer at the moment is that I need her head to get into my pelvis before my waters break, because if the head is still in the pelvis when your waters break, you have an increased risk of cord prolapse, which is a medical emergency. And in general, obviously, a baby's head can't come out of your hip. So you actually need a C-section. Like, it's just like, there's nothing you can do. So once the waters break and they've lost all their cushioning, they're much less likely to move down into the pelvis. And so all of that I would just like to avoid, and I would like to get her down into my pelvis. I'm doing my at-home exercises. I will go back to the osteo at 37 weeks. I'm not going to do it before then just because I don't want to trigger early labor. And and just really hoping that she gets into a good position, because otherwise all of my stressing about where to birth the baby will be irrelevant, because I would need a C-section for my baby being oblique. The one thing that really encouraged me is when I had all of those prodromal contractions. So they were quite strong. I could feel Jane moving a lot. I'd gone to bed at 9. I woke up at 10:30, and then I was still aware I was having the contractions until about 3 a.m. was when I was like, okay, I think they've finally died off and I'm going to be able to sleep again. And I palpated my stomach at that point, and that was the first time where I could feel her back going straight down, and I could sort of feel the shoulders right down near my pelvis. And so that was encouraging to me that with the contractions happening, it had pushed her down into the pelvis. By the next day, when I had my midwife appointment, she was back. You can feel her back sort of like across from the bum up in my left ribs, and then her back over on the right side with her head in my hips. So she definitely moved back there, but it was encouraging that with the prodromal contractions, it had pushed her down into the pelvis. So I am ever hopeful that it just won't be an issue, and it'll just progress as expected at the time. So that's where everything's at right now with this pregnancy. I don't know that I'll do many more pregnancy updates as such. I am hoping to get a video filmed of my birth story from my 4th baby before I go into this birth story. I hope that you are well, and I appreciate the support and encouragement along our journey. I just wanted to be honest as well where I'm at. I don't think it's helpful to pretend that, you know, losses don't have impact and things like that. It's definitely changed this pregnancy journey. For the most part, I am loving the pregnancy. For the most part, I am able to be in a really grateful headspace. The Christian Hypnobirthing app really, really helps me. They have a fear release track, which is really lovely to listen to when I am overwhelmed. I think more than anything, it's the talking about it that, really brings it all to the front. And that's okay. It's part of the journey. And I'm really looking forward to Jane. I'm really grateful for the timing. She's due late November. And with our business, the way that it works, we basically sort of shut down early December because we generate consults for dentists. Dentists do not need consults in December. they are totally swamped. They all take at least 2 weeks off over December, and all of their existing patients want consults before Christmas. You know, suddenly everyone realizes, oh, that that tooth issue I've been putting off forever, I should get that fixed before Christmas. So we always have a period of at least a month where we're not doing our normal work. We normally shut down over December. And so it's amazing timing to be having my maternity leave and feel like I'm not taking extra time off from what we would normally be having anyway. It's exciting. It's really exciting. We're looking forward to meeting her. My husband is really excited. The kids are really excited. My eldest, Amelia, she's almost 12, and she was saying she's really excited to try and be really helpful in the labor, which I was telling her, I was like you have been helpful even back when she was 9 at the last birth. Just having them there, having them be hearing their voices, just having their presence there is genuinely helpful to me. I really like it. And they're also physically helpful. One of the things with my last birth, I got into the birth pool right in front of our wood fire. And it was a winter birth. So we had the fan blasting to try to make the room warm for the baby. But I was way overheating giving birth. And so Amelia and Joseph, my 2 eldest, took turns fanning me. So they were blocking the heat with their bodies, and they were fanning me, and they would swap between the 2 of them when their arms were sore and things like that. So they have been literally physically helpful already in previous births. But it's just beautiful. It's beautiful seeing her be excited for the birth and be part of that birth planning and being excited for it. So I will let you know how it all goes.